Hello, everyone, and welcome to the All Four Downs podcast, week 7 of the college football. Yes, we're getting set for awesome games coming up this weekend, some shakeups in the top 25, and some good news that was passed along this week on the transfer portal. We got that and much, much more here on the All Four Downs podcast. Thank you for joining me. And let's dive right in because, man, there was some upsets in week 6, and I'm going to cover it down to you. And we start with first down. Texas falls to Florida 29-21. Miami defeats Florida State 28-22. Miami becomes the Florida champs. Moving on to Iowa State, which, by the way, Cincinnati was favored to win this game, not ranked. And they went ahead and defeated the 14th Iowa State 38-30. And the biggest upset of them all, UCLA gets their first win 42-37. Wow. Now I'm going to be talking about Penn State. You know I will. And I'm laughing. They always say that whoever laughs better, right? I mean, that's a Spanish thing going on. And I really got to laugh because I've been saying it all along since, I don't know, since preseason. Preseason rankings came out, and all of a sudden we had Texas at number 1, Penn State at number 2. And I believe Clemson was number 4, and Arizona State was somewhere in the top 10. But here we go, because these 4 teams, not where they're supposed to be. It is not what is supposed to be expected. And I've been saying this all along. For the Texas Longhorns, it's a big surprise because I was sold that Arch Manning was the biggest, best thing for college football, right? Because he's a Manning. Eli was, he succeeded. Peyton Manning succeeded. Peyton Manning's the Hall of Famer in the NFL, and who knows if Eli Manning's going to be in the Hall of Fame? But it's in the family. But things are not looking good for Texas. They're looking average. And everything's based on what happened last year. And let's be real. Let's be realistic that the talent has been spread across college football. And so there is no guarantees. None. So you really got to follow these transfer portals. You got to really follow on how these schools are recruiting. It's not longer the high school who has the best recruit out of high school. You got to dive into these transfer portals and see if these players are best fit for the organization. We're just not seeing that from the AP polls or the coaches poll. And for that preseason top 2 teams are no longer there. Texas, 2 losses. Penn State losing badly. Look, it's one thing losing to Oregon, but to lose to a winless team like UCLA, which, by the way, UCLA fired their head coach because they have never led a game. And it took against Penn State to start the game 10-0 and never lost the lead. UCLA defeats Penn State 42-37. Texas goes down 29-21. Quarterback Lagway and I think their wide receiver Dallas Wilson, who is a true freshman, they were turning it up. That's embarrassing to the Texas Longhorns. Miami and Florida State, at least there were 2 ranked opponents. But for Texas and Penn State to lose the way they did, they just don't deserve to be in the top 25. None. And it's embarrassing. This adds to why we have a college football committee to do the rankings, which starts in November. This is why. We can't rely on the AP poll. It is what it is. And speaking about the rankings, let's move on to second down. Because in my top 10, just based on the top 10, the 10 teams all deserve to be in the top 10. So that right there, I do agree. Across the board, the AP top 25, the coaches poll, and myself, I agree. The 10 teams are right there. It's just out of order. And that's okay. Yes, okay, I got it. Ohio State's number one. Finally, I got them ranked at number one. They deserve, but it's just the balances of the other teams. Miami deserves to be number two because, yeah, they beat a ranked opponent, Florida State. It was meaningful. I got it. But then, who's next? I got to say, who's next? Ole Miss is undefeated, and they're winning, and they're very successful. Remember, they don't have Jackson Dart anymore. They don't have these key players that were with Ole Miss that already went to the NFL, and yet they're winning. As a matter of fact, this Ole Miss is so different with Lane Kiffin that they're more disciplined, less penalties, more control of the ball, and they're driving. Alabama's number four for me. I got to give respect to Alabama. Here's why. Yes, they beat the Georgia Bulldogs. And no matter how you see it, a win's a win. And yet, Georgia, after a loss, went back and won against Kentucky. They beat them. Not like Penn State, who, by the way, not only lost to Oregon, but lost to UCLA. So when you look at stuff like that, let's look at the weight of the strength of schedule. Is Oregon really should be higher than Alabama? I don't think so. I really don't. That is debatable. That's why Alabama should be ranked on top of Oregon. Because if Penn State would have won their game, then I could give credit to Oregon and be positioned on top of Alabama. Maybe on top of Ole Miss. Maybe they should be at number 3. Who knows? But the thing is that with Penn State losing the way they did, it scratch your head. Was that game valuable? We do look at who you beat and the strength of schedule. Well, that weakens the schedule. I'm looking at now Texas A&M. They're winning, and then there's Texas Tech. Okay, how do we do that? Matter of fact, not much about them. It's Oklahoma and Texas A&M, because Oklahoma has beaten 2 top 25 teams, and Texas A&M only once. Yet they don't cross paths with one another. So how are you ranking Texas A&M higher than Oklahoma? And yet you're giving Texas A&M a vote for a number 1 spot. I'm scratching my head as to why. You base it on one game? I need to know those answers. I really do. Okay. Oklahoma should be higher ranking than Texas A&M. I really do. And yet there's more, because the strength of schedule of Oklahoma worsens, right? It's the hardest because the last 5 teams that they play in their schedule are in the top 25. Not so much for Texas A&M. Well, Texas ruined it because Texas A&M got to play Texas, right? That rivalry game. So they ruined it. But for Oklahoma, they're still going to battle. Keep that in mind. Yeah, Georgia ranked number 9. That's agreeable. And Indiana's in there. But are we going to hurry up and put Indiana number 7? Is Indiana better than Georgia? I don't think so. We already looked, and yeah, let's compare, because the schedule for Indiana is very easy. It really is. Okay. Yeah, and it might be battle tested coming up, but it's not as hectic as in the SEC. And for Indiana, just remember, they got blasted when they went head to head of in higher levels. Okay. I'm just throwing that out there. I'll be careful how we ranking these teams. Let's put them to where they deserve it. If there's any week that I gotta say that could be debatable, it's all these other weeks. You have every right. But I'm still laughing because I've been right. And y'all challenge me. And that's okay. I love the conversation. I love the debates. But my top 10 looks solid right now in that order of presence. And that's very important, because when you see them for the playoffs, I'd rather see them the way I see it right now than the AP and the coaches poll. I'm just laughing because Texas A&M got a vote in the coaches poll. One, one person voted in for first place. Ole Miss got nothing. How's that possible? I'm just saying, speaking it real. Moving on to third down. Let's focus on this because now with the rankings, things are going to shift even more. Starting with the Michigan versus USC, that is a Saturday night game, and a little bit early for USC. I know they always got these late games and stuff that we don't watch them on TV. Finally, we will, but it doesn't matter because Michigan's defense is going to handle their business. And yeah, Michigan won last year, and they're going to win again on the road in USC, and Michigan will maintain and probably get that push near the top 10, depending on other schools. But they're going to make this even 6-6 in wins. And USC, again, not in the top 25. And understandably, that they'll probably finish 2-2 in their conference after this weekend. So, yes, Michigan will handle their business. It'll be I'll probably go under on their points. I don't think it's going to be a high score game, but I do believe that in the second half, Michigan will run away and just run the ball at them. Moving on to Ohio State and Illinois. Look, the Fighting Illini, I think that's their name, the Illinois. They just don't have what it takes to defeat Ohio State. Ohio State, when they play in their own conference, their defense looks awesome. But then again, wait till the last game of the season and we're going to have a different conversation. All right. Ohio State's won 6 in a row. You can make it 7 in a row. And I won't be surprised that with Ohio State win over Illinois, it will knock off Illinois from the top 25. Moving on to Alabama and Missouri. Great game. It's going to be a great game. Alabama 4-1, Missouri 5-0, undefeated. It's Missouri's second game in the SEC. Alabama's already been dived in, especially the win over Georgia and Vanderbilt. And then now they're going to put Missouri in place. I'm trying to find ways to convince myself that Missouri could defeat Alabama. And I can't. I'm looking at every angle possible for this game. And I just don't find a formula that's going to help me to pick Missouri. Last year, Alabama shut out Missouri. So what makes you think it's be any different because they're in Missouri? If anything, maybe Missouri get maybe one touchdown, one score, either touchdown or field goal. Unless Alabama falls flat and then don't take things seriously, then they could beat themselves. But other than that, Alabama should easily defeat Missouri in this game and make it 7 in a row. Next game I have is Indiana and Oregon. Talked about Indiana to be careful being ranked number 7. I have them at 10. And then there's Oregon, well deserved. Both teams undefeated, both 2-0 in the Big Ten, but there's going to be a winner and there's going to be a loser. I got that check mark next to Oregon. I'm going to back myself up on this. I know Indiana won. Last time they won was in 2004. Well, 21 years later, give it to Oregon. I give home field advantage, man. But I am taking the over on the 55.5 points. So if you're betting, I'll just take the over and let's see both teams just beat each other up and rack up some points. Yeah, I believe so. I'm loving it. All right. And my other game, BYU goes on the road against Arizona. BYU is 5-0 in the Big 12, 2-0, excuse me. With Arizona split 1-1, and you gotta figure, hey, what's going on here? Well, BYU has won 4 straight games, and no one's talking about BYU. None. But I'm watching. I agree. Taking BYU to win big against Arizona. And lastly, Arizona State, which is the second week in a row that you'll see a ranked team predicted to lose against an unranked team. Yeah. Cincinnati did it this past weekend, unranked and defeated a ranked opponent. And now we got Arizona State ranked 21. take on Utah. And even though Arizona State 2-0, but they're favoring Utah 5.5 points. I'm going to believe on the bookies, and I'm taking Utah. Yeah. Arizona got that win last year, but the Arizona State's not the same team as last year. So I'm giving it up. Utah will win big. Big at home. Get back on track in the top 25 while Arizona State falls out of the top 25. And then that leads us to fourth down. Our news came out about the NCAA adopting January 2nd through the 16th a transfer portal for Windows for the FBS and FCS for the 2026. Now, granted that it got moved from December to January, but did that solve the problem? I don't think so. I don't think so. But here's some updated changes here. Okay. The key changes is that the NCAA Division One has approved to move the primary college football transfer portal window to the date that I just told you, between January 2nd and the 16th. And again, any players, FBS, FCS, right? Players, including graduate transfers, will be unable to formally enter the portal until January 2nd each year and make contact with other schools during that window. For teams that advance to the college football playoff final championship game on January 19th, and additional 5-day window, January 20th through the 24th, is provided for the portal entry. So if you're in the playoffs, you could wait until January 20th to the 24th. That, what I say, is improving. Okay. But what I don't like is that why are we just doing it for that week? Again, this is a business now, right? Players getting paid, the Neal agreement, and all that good stuff. Why couldn't you just open a transfer portal after the national championship? Why? Why can't you just do that 1 month later? Or after the national championship, the next day, start it off. Have it for a week or 2 weeks, that window and stuff like that. And that way, that gives chance for the coaches to only not pay attention to the transfer portal, but they could concentrate on the game itself. That's what the coaches wanted. They've been preaching about it. But if they want to adopt that for that week, well, let's see. I know there's a cushion for the teams that make it to the playoffs, but the coaches are still working in the transfer portal. And that's that gray area of whether or not they get fined for violating rules and stuff like that. There's these unwritten rules or rules that are not being discussed to understand really what coaches can and cannot do. The related form, the coaches change exception, is in effect. The committee also reworked rules around transfers following head coaching changes. Previously, after a coaching change, players had 30-day window to enter the portal. Under this new rule now, the window is reduced to 15 days, beginning 5 days after the new coach is announced or hired. So the day that the coach is hired, they got 5 days after the new coach is announced, okay, for that 15-day window to get on the transfer portal. But there's only 4 programs that are exempt. They're grandfathered in because Arkansas, Oklahoma State, UCLA, and Virginia Tech, they already fired their head coaches. So the rules don't apply to them this year, but it will next season. Other areas, the January window begins one day after the college football playoff quarterfinals conclude. The NCAA recently eliminated a spring transfer window, consolidating transfer activity into this single off-season period. I don't like that rule. And here's why. What about, well, let's put it this way. Are we referring to just football? or we're also referring to college basketball and other sports in college. Okay, that's a great question, right? So again, the NCAA recently eliminated the spring transfer window, consigning transfer activity into the single season off season period. Is that referring to just football? Who knows? The next thing is initially that the proposal for a 10-day January window, but feedback from student athletes led to extending it to 15 days. We'll see. The reforms have drawn some legal concerns. Some foresee antitrust challenges to narrow the nature of the window. Transfer activity has been high during the 2024-25 academic year. Over 4,900 FBS students and over 3,200 FCS players entered the transfer portal. So, what does that mean? These numbers could double because of the short window. Is this good for business? Are we making improvements here? It's a great question. But we'll soon find out later on if it's working because it just seems that it takes some time, just like it takes time to get right on the college football playoffs. Every year they make some changes. So maybe this is a pilot course that they're taking, and they might tweak it as each time we get to this. So let's see what happens here. All right. That's all I got for this show. I'm loving it. I am loving it. That's it. It's all Four Downs podcast with the Four Downs Three Counts production. You can visit our website, fourdowns3counts.com. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel and Facebook, follow along, and let me know who are your picks for this week. Who's your top 10? And is there any upsets that's going to happen this weekend? I can't wait to hear all you have to say. I appreciate everything. Thank you for following. Until this weekend, when I announce my next top 25, it's going to be awesome, baby. Love it. Take care, everyone. God loves some football.